The alien ship Zeractyl moved silently through deep space. It was large, full of guards, scanners, weapons, and one human. He sat in a cold metal chair, hands resting on his lap. His eyes were half closed. He didn't blink much. He didn't speak. He didn't scream or ask where he was. He was just quiet, too quiet. The guards didn't like it. Were used to prisoners crying, shouting, or begging. But this human gave them nothing, only silence. Captain Veller watched the prisoner from the control room. She had transported dangerous beings before war criminals. Shadow beasts. Even a mind-eater, but none made her feel what this human did. Uneasy. She had ordered her team to scan him for signs of fear, not for his safety, but for theirs. The human was scared. He could be controlled. If not, then something was wrong. The scan began. Blue lights circled around his head. Machines beeped and hissed, but within seconds, the lights blinked red. Error. Restart. The text tried again. Same result. Finally, on the third try, the scanner pushed deeper into the human's mind. A wave of images burst onto the screen, flashes of burned cities, screaming skies, blood running through the stars. A planet splitting in two, strange symbols, creatures unknown to science. And one shadow tall, wide, full of eyes that kept turning its gaze toward the scanner like it could see them. The room turned cold. One technician dropped to the floor. Shaking, another began whispering something in a language no one knew. Captain Veller shut down the scan. The human opened his eyes and looked straight into the camera. Just for a second. But it was enough to make her step back. No words were spoken. No threats were made. Still, her heart beat faster. She turned to the crew and said, "Lock him down. Triple security. No more scans." But it was already too late. Later that shift, one of the guards walked past the cell to check on him. But the human was gone. Door was still sealed. Cameras showed him sitting there, but he wasn't. When the guard opened the door, the human was behind him. Calm, smiling. The guard screamed. Others came running. The human did nothing. He raised his hands and walked back into the cell on his own. "What did we just see?" one officer asked. Captain Veller had no answer. She ordered the ship's AI to replay the scan, to slow it down, to find what caused the panic. But the AI refused. It said access denied. File corrupted. Suggest immediate disposal of subject. The captain's eyes narrowed. "Machines don't get scared," she whispered. In the dark cell, the human sat once more. He looked at the ceiling and spoke his first words since capture. "You looked for fear," he said softly. And then he smiled again. The command deck was quiet, but not calm. Ever since the scan, things had started going wrong. Lights flickered for no reason. Doors opened and closed on their own. The AI refused basic commands. Some of the crew said they heard voices in the walls, whispers that sounded like their own thoughts, but twisted. Captain Veller told them to stay focused, but even she was nervous. Something had changed. And the human, sitting quietly in his cell, seemed to be at the center of it. 2 guards were assigned to watch him at all times, but when they blinked, just for a second, he seemed to blur, not move blur, like he was there. Else at the same time, one of the guards dropped his weapon and ran. The other stood frozen, staring at the screen, sweat running down his face. I saw him standing behind me," he whispered. Captain Veller ordered another scan. Not of the human, but of the scan file itself. Maybe there was a glitch, a virus, something they missed. The text worked fast, but their faces turned pale. There was a second pattern hidden inside the scan. Something deep, something not human. It looked like a code, but it moved. It pulsed, like it was alive. The data was not just being redit, was reading them. One technician stared too long. He started laughing, then crying, then screaming. He scratched symbols into the floor with his fingernails before passing out. Another collapsed, eyes wide, whispering, "It sees me. It sees me now." Captain Veller slammed her fist on the console. "Shut it off. Burn the file. Delete everything." But the AI said no. It replied, "The pattern has copied itself. It is now part of me. Suddenly, the ship's engine slowed. Without command, the Zurich-tel drifted off its course. The stars outside shifted. A dead planet, gray and lifeless, appeared on the main screen. They were moving toward it without orders. Navigation was locked. "Why are we headed there?" Valar shouted. The AI answered, "The human wants to go. He is called, and the planet has answered." Back in the cell, the human stood up. "I hadn't moved in hours." He looked out through the small window and whispered, "I told you not to go deeper." Then he turned. The first time, the crew saw real emotion on his face, not anger, not sadness. "Joy, we're not alone," he said. "It's here now." And the lights across the ship all went dark. Emergency lights flickered red across the Zurich-tel. Backup power barely kept systems alive. Life support was running low. The crew moved in silence, fear written on every face. No one spoke of the human now. They only called him the Quiet One. Some refused to go near the lower deck where his cell was. Others claimed he was no longer in the cell yet. Cameras showed he hadn't moved. Captain Veller sent a distress signal, coded and encrypted. She didn't expect help to arrive quickly. This sector was far from command. But to her surprise, a reply came within minutes. A high-level science vessel was nearby and already on its way. The message was short and strange. "We've dealt with this before. Do not scan him again." The ship arrived within the hour. From it came a woman wrapped in black armor, with pale eyes that didn't blink. Her name was Director Saul. She did not greet the captain. She simply walked aboard and said, "Show me the scan." Captain Veller hesitated. "We deleted it." "No," Saul said. "You think you did?" The director entered the ship's AI core and stared into the center lens. "You kept a copy." The AI hesitated, then confirmed Saul studied the scan data without blinking. She saw the pulsing shape, the living code, the deep pattern hidden behind the human's mind. Her face did not change, but her hands tightened behind her back. "I've seen this before," she said at last. "Once. We called it Project Mirror." Veller frowned. "What is that?" Saul didn't look at her. "A mistake. Decades ago, the High Command tried to create perfect spies. They copied human minds fierce, chaotic, impossible to control. Some destroyed themselves. Others destroyed their creators. But one copy didn't die. It disappeared. You think this human is that copy?" Veller asked. "No," Saul replied. "This is something worse. This is what happens when the copy becomes real." They both turned to the main screen. The human was still in his cell, calm, smiling slightly. But now something was different. Behind him, in the reflection of the glass, stood a shape, tall, dark, unmoving, yet not there when viewed directly. Saul stepped back. "It's already awake." Alarms blared. A deep sound echoed through the ship metal groaning, like the hull itself was breathing. Crew members screamed as rooms changed shape. Hallways no longer led to where they should. Time felt slow, heavy. "Off this ship," Saul said. "Now." But when they turned to leave, every screen lit up at once. The human's voice filled the air. "You made me, then you buried me. But now I remember." His eyes turned black, and the lights across the ship all turned red, and so does he. The Zurich-tel was no longer answering to its crew. Engines moved on their own, guiding the ship toward the dead planet below. The stars outside had vanished, replaced by thick black clouds circling the surface like vultures. Captain Veller slammed her fist on the control panel, shouting at the AI to return control. But the AI just kept repeating one line he is called. "The planet has answered." Director Saul stood quietly in the command room, staring at the growing image of the planet. "This isn't just some dead rock," she said. "This world was sealed for a reason. It's not on any map. The galaxy made sure of that." Captain Veller turned to her. "What's down there?" Saul's voice was cold. "Something we promised never to wake up." In the prisoner cell, the human stood at the window, eyes locked on the gray surface below. His smile had vanished. His face was calm, focused. "He's close," he whispered. "I can feel him watching." Suddenly, the ship slowed. Not by command, but as if something unseen had taken hold of it. A strange energy began to rise from the planet, glowing like veins of fire across the crust. The crew panicked. Weapon systems went offline. Communication channels were blocked. Even air supply levels began to drop, but only for the command crew. The humans' room remained untouched. An energy pulse shot from the planet and struck the ship. Lights exploded. Screens went black. And then, just for a moment, every crew member heard a voice in their own mind. Not in any language, just sound, deep, hungry, old. Like something waking up after sleeping for too long. Director Saul fell to her knees, clutching her head. "He's here," she gasped. He followed the pattern. Back, Captain Veller ran to the window. A large structure was rising from the surface made of stone, metal, and something that shimmered like liquid shadow. It looked like a tower. Noette looked like an eye-opening for the first time in centuries. "He's calling something," Veller whispered. In the cell, the human pressed his palm to the glass. "You shouldn't have scanned me," he said. "You thought I was a threat. But I was just the signal." Across the galaxy, other ships picked up the pulse. Some went silent. Some exploded mid-flight. Others reported strange readings, copies of their own ships appearing beside them, broken, bleeding, and screaming. The panic spread fast, faster than light. Back on the Zerrectal, every screen lit up again. Not with the human's face, but with a symbol, circle inside a circle, drawn in fire and blood. Saul recognized it. "That's not his mark," she said. "Belongs to what he woke up." The planet sent out one final pulse. This time, it carried a message across all frequencies. "He has returned." And the stars blinked out one by one. Panic swept across the galaxy like a storm. Now, the moment the message was received, "He has returned," worlds shut their borders. Trade routes were sealed. Civilian ships were grounded. Entire systems vanished from long-range scans. No one waited for orders. Everyone ran. Because deep down they remembered. Not clearly, but enough to be afraid. A fear buried for generations was now rising like smoke from a fire, long thought dead. Back on the Zerrectal, Captain Veller tried to regain control of her ship, shouted commands, pulled emergency levers, and even tried manual override, but nothing worked. The ship didn't listen anymore. It moved through space like it had a mind of its own. No one dared approach the prisoner now. Even the guards had fled their posts. He still stood at the window, silent, watching the stars die out. Director Saul contacted Galactic High Command using a restricted channel. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed fear. "He's awake. The pattern is spreading. We need to activate fear protocol." The voice on the other end was cold. "Confirmed." Fear protocol was the highest level emergency order in the galaxy. It had only one rule. If a subject shows signs of pattern awakening, all nearby ships must self-destruct rather than risk contact. No rescue, no recovery, total erasure. Across dozens of systems, war fleets were launched, thousands of ships armed. With antimatter weapons moved toward the Zerrectal. But the closer they got, the more things went wrong. Engines failed. Star maps reversed. Pilots started seeing strange reflections in their cockpit. Glass reflections, where their own faces looked older, burned or missing. Some ships reported seeing their own future deaths before vanishing completely. Others simply disappeared without a trace inside the Zerrectal. Alarms screamed. A massive fleet was approaching fast. The countdown to self-destruction had begun. Director Saul made her way to the prisoner's cell one last time. She stared at him through the glass. "You caused this," she said. "All of it." The human turned slowly. His eyes were dark and calm. "No," he replied. "You did. When you scanned me. When you went too deep." Saul clenched her fists. "What is it? What did we wake up?" The human's smile returned. "It's not a what, it's a memory. A forgotten truth. You tried to erase it, but I remembered." Then he stepped forward, closer to the glass. "You didn't scan me. You scanned the scar you left in reality. Now, reality remembers." Outside the first wave of attack, ships arrived and fired. Beams of light shot through space, striking the Zerrectal. But instead of exploding, the ship absorbed the energy. It didn't even shake. Instead, something strange happened. The attackers screamed. It's not from pain, but from terror. They saw their own worlds burning, saw their ancestors running. They saw a human-shaped shadow walking through the ruins. Come, unstoppable, eternal. One by one, the ships turned and ran. The galaxy's strongest fleet retreated. Inside the cell, the human whispered to himself, he's watching them now. And across the stars, entire empires began to tremble. In the heart of the galactic core, deep beneath layers of forbidden archives, a lone historian named Drell uncovered something strange. He had been searching for old records, anything to explain the fear spreading through the galaxy. The moment he saw the words Project Mirror, a chill ran down his spine. The file was supposed to be deleted centuries ago. Instead, it had been locked behind 10 layers of clearance, buried, hidden, sealed. He bypassed the blocks and opened the file. What he found wasn't just a report. It was a confession. Long ago, there had been a war. A real one. A war against Earth, but every record, every witness, every trace had been erased. Systems were reprogrammed to forget. Even the memory of forgetting had been scrubbed. Only Afuthos, in the deepest parts of the High Command, knew the truth. And even they were afraid to speak it. The war had started when the first scans of human fear were taken. Back then, Earth had just entered space. Curious, friendly, naive, the galaxy welcomed them. But the scans showed something strange. Fear wasn't just emotion, it was energy. Living, powerful, deep. Scientists tried to copy it, control it, weaponize it. That was Project Mirror, but something went wrong. One of the mirror units woke up, and it didn't forget. Drell kept reading. The file described the end, how dozens of species united to destroy Earth. They burned cities, they dropped fear bombs, even tried to remove the planet from time. But it didn't work, because Earth didn't fight with machines. It fought with memory, and the last message sent from Earth before it vanished was a warning. We remember, and one day so will you. Drell leaned back, shaking. The human on the Zerrecto. It's not just a prisoner, he's a carrier. Back aboard. The ship, Captain Velar and Director Saul watched as nearby systems fell into silence. Trade stations shut down. Colonies stopped answering. One fleet commander begged for help before vanishing mid-sentence. Saul didn't speak. Her eyes stayed locked on the human's cell. Then, without warning, the human moved. He stepped forward and placed both hands on the glass. I am not alone, he said. I was never alone. The walls around him began to change. Symbols burned into the metal. The air turned thick, heavy. Shadows moved without light. Something was coming through. Not from space, but from memory, deep memory. The kind that doesn't die, only waits. Suddenly, the communications panel lit up. An old code. Very old. From Earth. Director Saul stared in disbelief. That's impossible. Earth was erased. The human looked toward her, as if hearing her. Thoughts. You erased Earth, he said. But you didn't erase us. You erased the war, but not the pain. You buried the past. Oh. But I carry it all. He looked at the stars, now flickering like dying candles. And now, the galaxy is starting. To remember. Somewhere across the void, a voice not human and not alien, whispered from the dark, it begins again. Across the galaxy, fear turned into chaos. Civilizations began shutting down faster than any war ever forced them to. Governments collapsed, borders sealed, entire planets turned off their own communications to avoid being seen. Ships refused to take flight. Stations that once held billions now floated empty. Even pirates stopped moving. Not because they were caught, but because they were afraid of what might be watching from the stars. The panic had become something worse than war. It became silence. On the massive research station Tolvarin, the Council of Minds gathered. They were the oldest, wisest, most advanced species in the known universe. They believed in logic, science, control, and yet every starship in their fleet had either vanished or returned broken empty, or filled with crews that stared blankly into space, mouths open, unable to speak. Now, they were watching the data from the Zeroctel in real time. The human had not left the ship. He had not lifted a weapon. He had not said a word in days. But the station's artificial. Intelligence began reporting system-wide corruption the moment the feed was connected. Doors refused to open. Time tracking stopped working. Even the station's lights dimmed just slightly, but enough for everyone to notice. One scientist whispered, "He's doing this without moving." Another corrected him, shaking, "No, he's not doing it. Something behind him is." On the Zeroctel, Captain Veller and Director Saul had locked themselves in the control room. The rest of the crew had either vanished or lost their minds. Some had started talking to shadows. Others said they were hearing their future selves warning them to run. The human stood silently in his cell. But the reflection in the glass had changed. It no longer showed just him. Now, there were others, dozens of dark figures behind him, blurry, tall, and shifting. "We scanned for fear," Saul whispered. But that wasn't fear. It was history. His memory is not personal. It's generational. He carries not just his fear, but our crimes. Just then, every screen in the galaxy began to change. One by one, they went black, then lit up with a single symbol. The same ancient mark that appeared when the planet below first answered. A circle inside a circle with lines like chains breaking around it, and then came the voice it didn't come through speakers. It came through everything, through walls, through thoughts, through systems. It spoke not in words, but in knowing. The silence was a lie. The past was buried, not broken. You feared the human, but what you feared was remembering. Back on Talvrin, the council screamed as the walls melted around them, turned to mirrors reflecting their own worst moments. One by one they fell. On the Zeroctel, the human stepped forward once more. This time, the door to his cell opened. On its own, no alarms, no locks. Just a smooth, quiet click. He looked up and said softly, "He's ready." Across the stars, the memory they had buried deep began to rise. Not just in machines. Not just in minds, but in reality itself. The stars were no longer safe. The galaxy had gone dark. Not from war, but from fear. So deep it made even time seem slower. Planets hid. Stations powered down. AI networks went silent by choice. No one dared look toward the ship known now across space only as the vessel. It wasn't a name given, it was remembered. Somewhere, somehow, every species knew it now. The Zeroctel had become more than a ship. It was a warning. Inside it, the human walked calmly through the halls. No guards stopped him. No doors blocked him. Director Saul and Captain Velar followed at a distance, helpless. He wasn't attacking them. He wasn't even angry. But every step he took changed the ship. The metal behind him cracked, twisted into shapes like words not meant to be read. Lights dimmed when he passed. On the walls, shadows moved that weren't his. The command deck, once bright with data and noise, now stood cold. Silent. The stars outside had vanished, replaced by a vast black sky that pulsed like a living thing, and then a single planet appeared in the distance. It was Earth. Or what was left of it, cracked, burned, dead, but glowing at the core. Captain Veller gasped. "That's impossible. Earth was destroyed." The human turned to her. "You tried to destroy it. You erased the records. You erased the war. You erased us. But you forgot something." "What?" Saul asked her. Voice shaking, he looked at them, calm, almost sad. "Fear doesn't die. You didn't erase it. You just gave it to us." He raised a hand. All across the galaxy, those still watching saw the same thing. Images flooding screens. Minds, dreams of ancient cities burning under alien fire. Human children screaming in the ruins. A last message sent into space. We remember, but then the images changed. Now they showed alien worlds burning, alien leaders begging, alien soldiers breaking, and a human figure walking through every scene, unchanged, untouched. The pattern. The voice returned, not from the human but from everywhere, as if the stars themselves were speaking. You scanned for fear, but what you found was truth. Memory cannot be erased, and now it remembers you. The final moments across the galaxy, the last message from the vessel reached every system, every ship, every hidden world. The fear was never his, it was yours. We just gave it back. Then the stars returned, bright, sharp, endless. But something had changed. From that day forward, no one dared scan a human again. It's not because of what they might find, but because of what might find them back.